day, Tony the circle maker was walking on the road, and he saw a man planting a carob tree. Tony asked the man, "How long will it take for this tree to bear fruit?" The man replied, 70 years. Tony then asked the man, "Do you think you will live another 70 years and eat the fruit of this tree?" The man answered, "Probably not. However, when I was born into this world, I found many carob trees planted by my father and grandfather. And just as they planted trees for me, I am planting trees for my children and grandchildren, so they will be able to eat the fruit of the trees." Erev Tov, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion of altruism. The story I just shared with all of you is part of a very famous series of stories centered around a character named Tony the Circle Maker. These stories are part of Jewish folklore, Jewish midrash. They're not scriptural. In this particular case, the reason this story struck me is because this man is preparing for the future by planting carob trees, trees that he knows will not bear fruit for him, but rather for the future generations. And I believe that you can see in this story at least a little bit, maybe some shades, of our topic for tonight. Some of us were talking before dinner about this word, altruism. We all use it, but how do we really define it? So I went to the source, the dictionary, Webster's in particular, a real live dictionary, by the way, one that's a book, you know. I'm looking around, and most of you, I think, are old enough to actually remember books. I was teaching a class last night, and I said, and we used the Encyclopedia Judaica, and I looked around to make sure everyone knew what an encyclopedia was, but I think all of you know. So I went to the real live dictionary, pulled it off my shelf, and this is what I found under the topic altruism. Number 1, unselfish concern for the welfare of others, or selflessness. Number 2, the doctrine that the general welfare of society is the proper goal of an individual's actions, and this is opposed to egoism. So the man in our story was certainly concerned for others, not worrying about whether he'll be alive to reap the reward, to reap the food from the trees he's planted. So that, you could say, was an altruistic story, a story about a person who was doing something altruistically. Then I went to an actual encyclopedia, the Jewish encyclopedia, and they have a fairly long description of altruism in Judaism. I'm going to share just part of it with you. I think it's a little wordy, but I think you'll get the idea. It says, the purpose of human life is service now and here. In the creation narratives in the book of Genesis, man is destined to be ruler over every being and thing that is created. In this purpose, all that live and breathe in the wide sweep of human fellowship have a part. None can be spared. What is ours only as a means to enlarge the common life. We are stewards of our talents and property, trustees in the service to all. In this way, Judaism overcomes the opposition of egoism to altruism and finds the higher synthesis on the basis of the community of service. Hillel's maxim, Im ein an mili mili, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Epitomizes this concordance of self and the others. The highest aim in the economy of society and of creation is self-assertion in the service of all. Not egoism, which feeds self at the expense of others, nor altruism, which effaces self while thinking of others, but mutualism, as implied in the words, love thy neighbor as thyself. This is the guide principle of Jewish ethics. So, I don't know about you, but that seems like really lofty ideas and words to me. So I thought that in order to demonstrate this lofty principle, I'd share with you two very important concepts in Judaism. Hopefully they're a little more down to earth than what I just shared with you. They're pikuach nefesh, the concept of pikuach nefesh, saving a life, and the concept of tikkun olam, repairing or perfecting our world. First, pikuach nefesh, saving a life. There are, in the Jewish Bible, 613 commandments. I know most of you probably think that there are 10 commandments. I lovingly refer to them as the Big 10. When I lived in Missouri, and I would say that, no one got it. But now that I'm back in Michigan, it works every time, so thank you. So there are the Big 10. There are the 10 that most of us know that are first given and spoken in the book of Exodus and later reiterated by Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. But Jewish tradition actually finds 603 other commandments in the Bible. There are 365 negative commandments, thou shalt not, and 248 positive commandments, thou shalt. Just as a quick aside, the numbers are very significant. You'll recognize the number 365, of course, the days of the year. And the number 248, some people who are from a different part of our state will tell you that that's their area code. I get that sometimes. But 248 in ancient days is what people believe were the different parts of our body, that we had 248 different parts in our bodies. We know now that that's not correct, but that was what they thought. And so the concept of everything of our bodies and every day of the year means that we are to follow these commandments with everything that we are, and what we might say today, 24/7, right? 365 days a year. Now, of these 613 commandments, Judaism teaches that all but 3 can and must be broken in order to save a life. A person is supposed to, not even supposed to, must do everything in his or her power to save a life, breaking all of these commandments, except for 3. And you can probably guess what they are. The commandments against idolatry, the commandment against illegitimate sexual relations, is how some people put it, and the commandment against murder. And by the way, in the Hebrew, it is actually murder, not kill. I know some translations have kill. So other than these 3 situations, a person is obligated to do all that is within his or her power to save a person's life. The question then arrives, well, what if I'm trying to save someone's life, but it's going to put my life in jeopardy? And our tradition says that you are not obligated to save someone else's life if it will put your life in jeopardy. Okay, so that's saving a life. The second concept I'd like to share with you is called tikkun olam, repairing or perfecting the world. The Jewish Bible begins with the concept of an ideal place, the Garden of Eden, in which God places the first human beings. But we understand from that story, the Garden of Eden story, that the work of creation of the world is not complete. The world requires the efforts and the participation of human beings to be perfected. And some would even say that it's up to human beings to work to bring about the messianic vision. There's a strong undercurrent in the biblical stories and in the prophets, as well as in Jewish mysticism, that the world is in need of repair. The Hebrew word tikkun, which we usually translate as to repair or to perfect, has its earliest origin in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, and there it is used to talk about setting something straight or setting something in order. The larger phrase tikkun olam is found in many, many post-biblical Jewish texts. And perhaps the most famous use of this phrase comes from the 16th century, from a group of mystics who lived in the community of Tzfat, which is in modern-day Israel. And the story is told that on a new month, a Rosh Chodesh in Hebrew, Rabbi Isaac Luria known as the Ari, led his disciples outside at night, and he told them to follow him. He led them without any light. He did not have a torch. The only thing that lit their way were the stars in the sky. And yet it seemed to his disciples that there was another light that guided them, an aura, if you will, that emanated from the Ari. At last they reached their destination, the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. And there the Ari began to sway and to pray with great intensity. And all of the other people joined him, swaying and praying back and forth, until it seemed to them as if they were being rocked in a cradle of stars. At last they completed their prayers, and there was silence. And this silence lasted long into the night. And for all of them, it was as if they had discovered the world on the first day of creation. Then, at midnight, the Ari began to speak. And every word seemed to them like one of the words with which the world was created. For there he revealed the mystery of the shattering of the vessels and the gathering of the sparks. How long before the sun cast a shadow, before the word was spoken that brought the heavens and the earth into being, a flame emerged from an unseen point. And how sparks of light sprang forth from the center of that flame, concealed in shells that set sail everywhere, above and below, like a fleet of ships, each carrying its cargo of light. And he explained to them how the frail vessels broke open, and how all the sparks were scattered like sand, like seeds, like stars. And that is when they learned why they had been created, to search for the sparks, no matter where they were hidden. And as each one was revealed, to raise it up and redeem it. For when all the scattered sparks had been gathered, the vessels would be restored, and the footsteps of the Messiah would be heard at last. Just as the Ari finished speaking, a comet streaked across the sky. And when they saw this, all of them were filled with wonder, for they understood that they were not the only ones who had heard the words of the Ari that night. The words had also been heard in heaven. I hope that story, which is a beautiful story, and the version that I shared with you comes from a wonderful book called Gabriel's Palace, written by a Jewish storyteller and author, Howard Schwartz. I hope that story shares with you a little bit about how Judaism teaches our role in this world. That we have two roles: to bring those sparks together, if you like that imagery, to repair the world, and to treat all of God's creations with respect and as we would like to be treated ourselves. We are to do our utmost to make the world a better place and to save lives in whatever form that may come. So it doesn't matter if you call it altruism, if you call it tikkun olam, if you call it doing good deeds, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. What matters, according to Jewish tradition, is that it's our duty. It's not something we have a choice in. It's our obligation to care for and to take care of God's creations and God's creatures. Thank you.